Friedman and say thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. And thank you all and all the people who are hearing this on streaming and everything else. Well, there's a big crowd, and it's getting to the point of why go by the UN when you can just listen to this online. But thanks for coming. I mean, this is a really cool time, I think, for branded content and the business. We talk about it as branded content, but really the cross-platform opportunities that are existing in the world today are pretty unusual. And we're really lucky to have some people representing a bunch of different sides of this plate. Probably, among them the most successful in the business right now, Brent Montgomery, Michael Buckley, and Jason Holzman. Let me just tell you 2 seconds about them so you'll understand, so a little bit of a context in some of these poignant questions that we will have. Brent's the founder and owner of Leftfield Pictures, but you probably would know him best as the executive producer on Pawn Stars. Pawn Stars is an amazing project. It has helped propel History Channel. I don't want to say #1 across all time periods, but certainly in certain demos. As a company, they have a lot of projects both in the branded space and the unbranded space on networks like History, A&E, Lifetime, MTV, Bravo, Food Network, et cetera, et cetera. Michael Buckley is the star of What the Buck and on YouTube. It's nice to know that he's probably one of the few talents doing video online that is actually successful and making a lot of money and has the ability to also live in Connecticut and not having to come into an office every day. He's worked with with a lot of brands across the board, very different kinds of brands, Virgin Mobile, Pepsi, GE, Sony, Intel, and with everything that's going on online, and we're very familiar with what's going on at YouTube, and I'm sure many people in here are either involved in doing one of the new YouTube premium channels. It'll be interesting to hear from Michael sort of the state of the world from his standpoint. Jason Holzman is Senior Vice President of Brand Creative for USA. He really develops all of what we used to call at MTV in the old days promotional development, all of the concepts in advertising for all of the programming categories across the networks. Shows like Burn Notice, Royal Pains. Interestingly enough, it's unusual, and it's one of the things that I've said in the past, to have someone who really understands the creative side and the marketing and advertising side and branded content, because I, for one, believe that this branded space is going to move into a place that's going to become a creative endeavor, not just a brand or product placement endeavor. And I can tell you, Jason, has written a number of screenplays, and sort of really comes from both sides. So it's great to have Jason here. And I'm Bob Friedman. I've been around for a while, purely in the entertainment space. I started at MTV. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary at MTV, the original group, and then went on to Playboy's Entertainment Group, really one of the founders in branded content in an interesting way, and then ran New Line Cinema and AOL. I'm currently at Radical Media, which was a commercial production company that is now right heart in the space of branded content, sort of, with shows like Iconoclast and a lot of Anheuser-Busch shows and Pepsi shows, but also non-branded stuff such as Mad Men, where we developed the pilot. I had to put in one little plug. I feel this is like a little bit of Back to the Future, to be honest. The world today, just to sort of set this up, is a little frightening. It's frightening for networks, and it's I think frightening for everyone else. The clutter is nuts. Production costs are going through the roof as media is disaggregating. Many of the network holding companies themselves are programming 5 and 10 channels. If you take a look at Discovery, you certainly take a look at the NBCU networks. The cost to program a 24-hour network, whether it's an own converting or whether it's one of the smaller networks, just using investigation as an example, is very expensive. Clients today, I think, are being integrated in ways that they never were before. If it were up to many of the ad sales people at these networks, they would rather this not be the case of this world of branded content. The days of, the old days when we'd say to Anheuser-Busch or Pepsi, give us $50 million and we'll give you an above-the-title sponsor, were a lot easier than having to integrate brands into the DNA of a show. On the side of the programmers, they're not necessarily on board because they just want a hit show, and when you have two different bosses or brands to answer to, it may get more difficult. So it's an interesting time, particularly when the only two people left, it seems to me, that have cash are advertisers or consumers. What's going to be the best way to tap into that cash and still deliver content to consumers? Interestingly enough, on the brand side, it should be known, which is great, according to the ANA, the top three reasons why clients find it beneficial and important are stronger emotional connection with the consumer to the tune of almost 80%, aligning a brand relationship with the content, the associative value that you might get, and building brand affinity. So it's interesting that everything seems like it could be hunky-dory, but a lot of people aren't buying into it on both sides, though we all believe it will be a big opportunity. So I want to turn to the panel and just sort of ask, and I guess I would start with Jason, since you come from a network that just recently launched a nonfiction, a reality area, and already you're obviously very active because everyone we've talked to has already seen your new head of nonfiction. Are the networks open to this? And if they are they open to it so they can get bigger ad buys, or is it because they really think they can integrate advertisers in productive ways? And what's your feeling as a network buyer?
Well, I think better to, in a way, talk to some of the ways that we've worked with brands on the scripted narrative side. I mean, the nonfiction, something we're just getting into now. And I think generally on the scripted side, we've looked for ways to have brands sort of extend and enhance viewers' experience with a particular show. I mean, there are, we do brand integration where we have advertisers' products integrated into a show. We have done title sponsors, the integration in the past. But I think where we've been really successful, again, finding ways that brands can help us give viewers a bigger experience around the show. A good example of that, something that we just did, we launched this summer. We have a show called Burn Notice, and we launched something this summer, a graphic novel, which is actually something you can see it online. It's a great experience on the iPad or the iPhone, and the idea of the graphic novel was to give viewers of Burn Notice additional content that they could only get through this experience, and it actually bridged some of the storylines that between the previous season and the season that we just had this summer. Hyundai came in as a sponsor of this graphic novel, and we did some stuff with them around it. And now we have new episodes of Burn Notice this fall, and we're actually integrating them, Hyundai, in a much bigger way. Hyundai is actually integrated into Burn Notice. One of the characters drives a Hyundai in the show and uses it, I think, in really interesting ways in the show. The graphic novel now is actually going to integrate the car into this graphic novel. We'll promote the idea behind the novel online. It's sponsored by Hyundai. We'll drive people to the site. So it's a really, Hyundai coming in enables us to help to create this content, but they're integrated into this content that for our viewers is added value, and it really enhances, I think, the way people perceive that brand. It's not just a passive bystander. It's actually adding value to the viewers of the show.
Brent, obviously you have maybe the #1 hit in the nonfiction area in television. Certainly, I'm a big fan of Pawn Stars. Are you finding the networks, because people sort of create brands for themselves and for companies and cultures, and when we go in to a network, we like to say, and we hope it's true more than not, that we know more about programming than the ad sales guy in the room and more about ad sales than the programming person. And sometimes it's easier for us to sort of make that link in a network room. And we all know there's a lot at stake. When you go in right now and you've produced some big hits, are you thinking, hey, this is a good direction to go with brands, or?
I think it depends on the specific network, and some of the conglomerates are much more willing. We're doing a couple things with NBC Universal, and they're very forward-thinking with with this, where some of the networks, it really comes from the president down, and if the president of the network is making a big deal about it, then it's a buzzword in those meetings, and you want to bring up that stuff. There's a show that another producer friend of mine does that just got a second season, and the tipping point was the branded integration that they brought to the table. So it kind of reminds me of like 2001, 2002, where a lot of people were like, is non-scripted around, is reality going to be around, or is it going to die out? I think people are asking that same question now about branded, and I think we have to do this, you know? I mean, it's more incumbent upon the networks, I think, to take the lead, because we'll follow and pitch it more if they're more willing to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're right, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how incentive programs change with executives at networks, because, you know, as the Freakonomics model says, if you're not incented to improve your EBITDA and you only care about a rating, it's going to sort of be interesting. Well, you know, Michael, the good news is, and a lot of what you're doing is, you don't have those buyers.
No.
And, you know, what the Buck sort of landed as a public access show to begin with.
Right.
And the big question for you is, because we'd all rather be doing this without barriers to entry and without having to deal with a network executive, how do you monetize what you're doing currently?
So most of my income is from YouTube. Just they run, and it's so funny because I remember I was at the first conference I ever spoke at in like 2007 or 8. I said that I was making a living doing this, and everybody like applauded, like they couldn't fathom that somebody was making money doing this. And then I remember my next conference, there was a big guy and he didn't want to talk. Right before we went on stage, he said, "Don't talk about branded stuff." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, what do you mean we can't talk about it?" Like he didn't want anybody to know that they were. It was weird, but anyway. So it's so interesting how 2011 it's so open and fun to talk about. So I mean, how I monetize, I mean, I was one of the first YouTube partners back in 2007 who was invited to share revenue with YouTube, so I started doing that full time, and then, I mean, advertisers just started approaching me, would you do this for this? And the first year, I mean, being a YouTube personality, we were all like, oh God, no, we're so afraid of our audience, sell out, you know, how could you do this? But now, fast forward to 2011, and they're thrilled. Like when we do big deals for like Kodak or Intel, or they're like, "Good job, Buck." Like they'd rather me be getting the money. They're thrilled when we do sponsored videos. Like they understand it, and like we'll talk about it all week. We'll be like, "I got a big video coming out on Wednesday. Make sure you help me promote it." And because they're so invested in us personally, they're invested in helping. And it's so interesting. Like we see people like, you know, make these videos, and we're like, oh, I remember they made that video about that product, and I'm more likely to buy it. I am, because I like to support my fellow, you know, online content creators. So it's an interesting world. I mean, I've been doing it for 3 or 4 years now, so I'm so used to it. But still, some days I'm like, wow, this is. I mean, it's fun. I mean, my life is fun and pretty easy. So yay. I mean, it is.
Let me just ask from your standpoint, and you sort of have this entrepreneurial setup, so it's probably a little different, but I'm curious. For the online and digital stuff that you're doing, from a production standpoint, budget-wise, because a number of people have been talking about, you know, are you guys making money in digital? And, you know, we all think maybe digital series, original series are a little bit further away than they are today, and who's making money? What are the budgets like? I mean, are they TV budgets?
I don't even have a budget. I mean, but see, the thing is, most YouTubers who became successful, they started production companies and they hired staff and they used grants. And I don't know if you've heard of Maker Studios, but they're in California now. They're so big, and they keep getting these, you know, $1 million, $4 million investments, and they basically just got like 100 YouTube people together and like, let's go in on this together. So it's nutty how, and now it's like, you know, advertisers just go directly to them because they've got so much audience. So I mean, a lot of YouTubers create, you know, they have a budget, I mean, I'm filming in front of a green screen in my house, and there really isn't, you know, there's no need, you know, I'm a one-man band, which in 2011 on YouTube is difficult to maintain, and because most people have much more support, and now you really can't do a branded video. I mean, the makeup people can, I don't know if you watch YouTube, but those girls who do those makeup videos, that is, you know, not very fancy, and they can get paid 5 figures and just talk about blush. I'm not kidding. And I mean, advertisers are paying them 5 figures a pop to talk about blush or some sort of makeup. So it's fascinating. I know, it's weird. It's an interesting world.
Just wait till you
But
get
our
back.
audience is so invested in us, whereas on TV there's a disconnect. That's why last night during X Factor I saw Simon Cowell do a Verizon commercial, and I thought, oh, good timing, because it's like I'm watching Simon on this TV show, and now I understand that's what a YouTube personality adds to a brand, is that their audience is like in the middle of their whatever they're doing, and it has to make sense, but like I said, my audience is happy for me. So when I have a sponsored video, I'm like, hey guys, Kodak is sponsoring this. Let's go to that website and pimp the crap out of it. They're excited to help me promote it. If that,
Just wait till that green screen. Wait till it changes when you get bought. I remember we did the movie Bamboozled. We had digital was just happening. It was the first digital movie. It was $22 million, that we spent on that movie. From a digital standpoint, from the network side, when someone's coming in with either an extension to an existing show or original content, do you think about the budgets differently, or do you basically say, it's a budget, it's content is content is content, I'm going to exploit it in these different ways?
Well, I think in a lot of ways, again, we look at what we do online as an extension of what we're doing on our air. And when you go to our site, every show has sort of a rich amount of content that supports a show. We do always look for ways to do, I don't know, maybe 360 is a passé term at this point, I don't know, but the sort of the 360 deals with our advertisers where they're coming in and they're doing something on our air, and we're extending that experience on our site. We've done some really interesting experiments. In fact, we just did something very recently. We're trying to play around more in the social media space, so that it's not just sort of, again, a passive engagement with people online. There's more of a two-way thing with our audience. And we actually did something with Lincoln. We have another show that we premiered this summer called Necessary Roughness. And Lincoln came in and they sponsored the premiere and the finale. They were integrated into the show with one of the characters. And what we did for the finale, this is actually, I think, the first time we'd done this. It was sort of a two-screen experience. So we have an app called Character Chatter, and it's sort of a way for people to view all of the feeds from all their social media, their Twitter, Facebook, our message boards on our site, all in one place. And so if you were watching the Necessary Roughness finale, a promo came in right in the A position, right out of the show, that said, if you go to Character Chatter right now, there's going to be an enhanced experience you can get only on the site. And right after that, a Lincoln ad played, and that Lincoln ad actually queued this content on Character Chatter. So it was synced as the ad was playing. A window came up on Character Chatter, sponsored by Lincoln. It was a quiz, and it had a question specifically about one of the characters in the show who drove a Lincoln. So the question was related to the advertiser. If you answered that question, it unlocked exclusive content. It was a behind-the-scenes set tour, so exclusive content that Lincoln, was sponsored by Lincoln. So again, we're looking for ways online to have brands, and I'm repeating myself, but again, it sort of extend and enhance and expand what a viewer's experience is, and in as sort of an integrated way as possible.
Yeah, I'd love to ask, all of you guys on the panel, because someone flipped this question to me once and said, what do you think has really worked in the branded space? And I froze because I naturally wanted to say something that I had done, but then you can't say that. And I sort of went to, when you were talking about the scripted side, I said I thought the best examples of branded content were on HBO. By accident, they created Manolo Blahnik, and not that I wear them, but I like them. And they created a drink like the Cosmo, an actual drink, and they sort of inadvertently did that.
Magnolia cupcakes.
And the Magnolia cupcakes, which we all enjoy here. So I was just curious, what do you think's worked out there? And it doesn't have to be a specific campaign. It could be like a category, like it's worked in sports or it hasn't worked here. These are the problems. Just I open up.
All right. In general, I think it's stuff that's quick hitting and comedic that can go viral really quickly. I think SNL has enjoyed a real resurgence. I think based on the fact that the online I mean, that show is built, you know, for a viral short clip. I mean, it just feeds, you know, bounces back and forth, I think, between the actual show and those clips going around. That's not really branded.
3 things I can think of quickly online that have been recent in the last year for like YouTube type people that I thought were very effective was the most popular makeup girl on YouTube is named Michelle Phan, and she does Lancome. She has a sponsor, and I love it, and I'm now, and I mean, so I'm very aware of Lancome because of Michelle Phan. Barbie did something, Mattel, with iJustine, who's a very popular video blogger, and she did a couple videos where she was touring the bar, and it was just so organic and natural. So I was just really, I was like, and I could just see the 13-year-old girls watching, like, I want to go get that Barbie. That was really effective. And GE hired Shay Carl, who's a very popular YouTuber, to go around for their Eco-Imagination tour. So he went to all these different like plants and learned about the environment and stuff. And I thought that was GE being very. So those are 3 examples of YouTubers in brand, good placement that I remember the whole campaign. I'm like, oh yeah, I was really into following that.
Well, I mean, and I think, you know, I mean, Mad Men clearly has done really interesting things in terms of, you know, branded content where you know, advertisers have come in and specifically been wrapped around the show in, I think, really interesting ways. And they've extended that out, you know, beyond the world of the show. Banana Republic does a Mad Men clothing line. So I think they've you know, so my bar is always like when I see something that I'm jealous of, you know, and I think Mad Men has done some things that made me jealous. You know, I think you're right. HBO has done some. Actually, one of the things that I loved is not specifically branded content, but the ways that HBO has managed to integrate advertisers with True Blood. They've done some really fun things where they sponsored. They created an issue in New York of this, you know, free newspaper, AM New York, and there were and it was Vamp New York, and there were advertisers in the paper. Like Geico, but they were vampire-themed ads.
Yes.
And so again, they created this world of the show, and they've extended it out into the real world, and which I thought was really interesting.
It's not really branded, but I don't know if anybody got the New York Post on Sunday, and it had the Atlantic City newspaper for
Boardwalk.
For Boardwalk. It was pretty
It was great. It was seamless, and it was very authentic.
You know, I mean, I think there are also probably plenty of examples of you know, really heavy-handed integration, you know, show sponsor stuff that hasn't worked. I mean, the Geico Cavemen series, you know, is probably a good example of that. You know, yeah. I think, you know, our philosophy, and again, not specifically about branded content, but about integration and about all the sort of, you know, strategic marketing, sales marketing stuff that we do. And I think this probably holds to you know, what makes something successful probably in other networks too, is to do things that are relevant and appropriate to our brand first, because you know, we're really protective of our brand, you know, to a fault maybe sometimes, but you know, keeping the integrity of our brand is really important, so that when we partner with advertisers, we want to do it in a way that, you know, first works for our brand and then works for the advertiser. But ultimately, it's better for the advertiser because, you know, in theory, we're doing things that are going to resonate with our audience. We know our audience. Our audience, you know, comes to us for specific things, and we can help advertisers create content that works for them, but really works for us in our shows as well.
Yeah, I know, and there are still a lot of paranoid. We were paranoid at MTV, you know, that does the brand work? And we came to the point that as long as it's not subliminal, it can work, as long as it's in line with the expectations of the network brand. Well, we have representation here from everything. We have independent producers, we have a network, we have independents. Curiosity, last question, if we have time from something from the audience, we'll ask it. At this point, this is a new nascent area. People say it's back to the future. I'm not so sure. You know, Winston cigarette ads in the Flintstones was probably not effective brand content in the old days. Yet, it's been around. They have a lot of cash, our partners in advertising. Question, where does it end up? And by that I mean, do the networks create these areas that are different than what is traditional ad sales and selling eyeballs? Does it end up in the holding companies? If you take a look at WPP, they have it in one holding company, and then their creative agencies, i.e. Ogilvy, has branded content in those agencies. Does it end up in independent production companies, or all of the above? It just seems there's so much at stake financially. Where does it end up in this business?
Well, you know, no surprise. My take would be, I mean, I think we've been really successful actually at working with brands and with advertisers, and I mean, our partners are, you know, it's interesting. My background is the traditional agency world, you know, but our partners are not the agencies; they're the media agencies, right? And you know, I think we've been successful, really successful at creating partnerships through the media agencies with brands, with advertisers, creating content for specific brands, some of which has actually run not just on our network, but has run other places. And you know, again, because I think that we understand our audience, and you know, that enables us to, gives us insights into the kinds of messaging that works specifically with the people who are coming to us to watch our shows. So I guess no surprise that that we're going to do more of that in the future.
Well, yeah, I think it's a great time to be a content producer. I think there's more avenues to distribute your work than there ever has been, and by a growing amount every day. I think the networks that are doing well are going to really push out a bunch of the networks that aren't doing too well, and because people just have so many other options. You see less TVs being sold now, more people watching on their computers. So,
I'm not that smart. I don't. Whoosh.
Okay. Well, I'll say.
I don't know.
I was just bullshitting.
I will say a politically correct thing, which is I think it will reside with people who really do understand the brand expectations. When you're in a world with 4 women's channels, in the case of NBC, Universal, competing with each other, you better understand that brand if you're going to create the content for them. We have time for 1 or 2 quick questions. I know we only have 2 minutes, if there are. And does anyone have anything that they? No? Oh, okay. We have 1 question. Okay.
The streamers can't hear it when we're not on mic.
In relation to Pawn Stars, we were discussing this earlier, but how does something that work where there's a company that has a business going? Did they come to you with the idea? Did you go to them? And then what happens upon like renewal when someone has such a large outside business interest in the show continuing?
Good questions. It varies. In this case, we went to them. They had been approached and done a pilot even before we got there, and we went in and just put a sizzle reel together that took a different take on what I compared to Times Square. There was Times Square pre-Giuliani and post-Giuliani. We really tried to show the rosier side of the pawn business. And to your second question, that's a big struggle. Our being able to shoot a TV show with these characters it really comes down to, can they give us the kind of time we need? Because the producers here know you need 50, 60 hours from your lead character a week. And that's pretty hard to do for a small business owner. We were lucky with those guys. They actually, you know, they had some money in their pocket. We're doing a couple series with people who, in this economy, are on the cusp, and our shows are kind of their last effort to essentially break through. And those are more challenging. And we've got those characters who are just burning it at both ends. But as producers, we try to actually, as a small business owner who didn't go into business to be a businessman, but more a creative producer, we have to kind of go in and be organized for them. We do a show called American Restoration, and we've kind of helped him organize his shop because he is a true artist. This guy restores all kinds of cool Americana, and he definitely needed more help than the pawn guys did because he sells $6,500 Coke machines that aren't really that hot demand during a recession.
Well, I want to thank you. I just want to end by saying thanks, you know, to the guys on this panel. Obviously, they're doing great stuff. I think in this branded content business, with the tension that's going on in the marketplace and the stress on margins, I think we all better figure out not only how to integrate brands, but also the ancillary opportunities to exploit the content that we're developing, and where those revenues end up is, I guess, left to be seen, and we'll know. But thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. And, yep.